Just a few decades after the American Revolution, the United States and Great Britain found themselves at war again. At the heart of the conflict lay the British impressment of American sailors, a blatant violation of personal liberty and national sovereignty. British naval ships, starved for manpower, would stop American vessels and force their sailors into service, causing outrage across the United States. Further fueling the tensions was the British interference with American trade. The British, locked in a titanic struggle against Napoleon's France, sought to cripple their enemy's economy by disrupting neutral trade, a move that significantly impacted American merchants. Lastly, Britain's support of Native American tribes against American expansion in the Northwest Territory became a major point of contention. The British supplied weapons and encouraged tribes to resist American settlers, leading to bloody frontier conflicts. And so, in 1812, a young United States declared war on the mighty British Empire, setting the stage for a conflict that would shape North America. The war did not start well for the United States. The early stages of the War of 1812 were characterized by a series of missteps and defeats for the fledgling American nation. The United States, eager to expand its northern territories, launched several invasions into Canada, but these were met with stiff resistance from a coalition of British forces and their Native American allies. The American forces, unprepared and ill-equipped, suffered major defeats in these early campaigns. The battles of Queenston Heights and Detroit, among others, were marked by American retreats as the United States struggled to make any headway against the formidable British defences. In addition to these military blunders, the United States also had to contend with internal strife. There was significant opposition to the war from the New England states, which relied heavily on trade with Britain. This opposition further weakened American morale and the war effort. But perhaps the most significant blow to the United States came in 1814, when British forces, retaliating for the American burning of York, the capital of Upper Canada, invaded the American capital. In a humiliating turn of events, the British burned down several public buildings in Washington, D.C., including the White House and the Capitol building. The sight of the American Capitol in flames was a stark reminder of the United States' vulnerability and the steep uphill battle it faced in the war. These early years of the War of 1812 were a period of trial and tribulation for the United States. The country was young, its military inexperienced, and its resolve tested. With its capital in ruins and its invasions of Canada repelled, the United States seemed to be teetering on the edge of defeat. However, it is often in the face of adversity that nations find their strength and resolve, and so it was with the United States. Despite the early setbacks, the country rallied, its people determined to defend their young nation. By 1814, it seemed like the United States was on the brink of defeat. But as we'll see in the next chapter, the tide of the war was about to turn. The conflict was far from over. As the War of 1812 dragged on, the United States found itself grappling with a formidable foe. Yet, in the face of adversity, the young nation began to turn the tables in their favor. Two key events stand out during this period. The first of these was the successful defense of Baltimore in September of 1814. Prior to this, the British had burned Washington, D.C., leaving the American morale at a historic low. But the Battle of Baltimore was a different story. The city's defences held firm against a relentless British assault. For 25 grueling hours, the American forces endured, refusing to yield, their resilience embodied in the sight of the resilient Star-Spangled Banner, which continued to fly high above Fort McHenry. The second event that marked a turning point was the Battle of Lake Erie, a pivotal naval confrontation that took place a year prior in September 1813. This was a battle fought not on land, but on water, and it was here that the United States proved its naval mettle. Under the command of Master Commandant Oliver Hazard Perry, the American fleet engaged the British in a fierce and bloody battle. After hours of cannon fire and chaos, the smoke cleared to reveal an unprecedented American victory. Perry's infamous words, "We have met the enemy and they are ours," echoed across the nation, invigorating the American spirit. These victories were not just military successes, they were symbolic triumphs too. They demonstrated the resilience and determination of a young nation, proving that the United States could hold its own against the established powers of the world. In the face of adversity, the United States had begun to turn the tide of the war. The war would finally come to an end in 1815. The dawn of this year brought with it the promise of peace, with both sides weary from years of conflict. The key to that peace would be the Treaty of Ghent, a document meticulously crafted by diplomats from both Great Britain and the United States. Negotiated in the Belgian city of Ghent, the treaty was signed on Christmas Eve of 1814. Its main purpose? To restore relations between the two nations to what they had been before the war. All captured territory was to be returned, and a commission would be established to resolve border disputes. Yet, even as the ink was drying on this historic agreement, one final clash was brewing across the Atlantic. The Battle of New Orleans, a conflict fought under the shadow of peace. The news of the treaty had not yet reached the distant shores of America, and so, in January of 1815, American forces led by future President Andrew Jackson clashed with the British. The battle was a resounding victory for the Americans, bolstering national pride and solidifying Jackson's status as a war hero. However, it was a battle fought in the absence of war. The Treaty of Ghent had already concluded the conflict, yet the news travelled slower than the soldiers' march. The War of 1812 was a complex and multifaceted conflict that spanned several years and countless battles. It was a war that tested the resilience of a young nation and the strength of an established empire. It was a war that saw the birth of national anthems and heroes and the death of thousands. While the Treaty of Ghent and the Battle of New Orleans marked the end of the physical conflict, the echoes of the war would reverberate through the centuries. The events of 1812 to 1815 left an indelible mark on the national identities of both the United States and Great Britain. The War of 1812 had significant repercussions for both nations involved. The dust had barely settled on the battlefield when the impact of the conflict began to take shape. In the United States, the immediate aftermath of the war ushered in what historians refer to as the era of good feelings. Patriotism surged as Americans celebrated their newfound sense of national identity, having once again held their own against a global superpower. This era, marked by a strong sense of national unity and a reduction in political strife, played a pivotal role in fostering the young nation's growth and development. Meanwhile, to the north, the war solidified the Canadian-American border, reinforcing a peaceful coexistence between the two neighbours that endures till this day. The conflict had demonstrated Canada's resilience and determination to remain independent of American influence, a sentiment that would underpin its national identity in the centuries to follow. Yet, the aftermath of the War of 1812 was not all marked by unity and self-determination. It also signaled the end of Native American resistance to American expansion. The war had shattered the alliances that many Native American nations had formed in an attempt to resist the encroachment of American settlers. Their defeat left them vulnerable to American expansion, and in the decades that followed, they would be systematically dispossessed of their lands. Reflecting on the aftermath of the war, it becomes evident that the War of 1812 was more than just a historical footnote. Its legacy is woven into the fabric of North American history, shaping national identities, borders, and the very landscape of the continent itself. So, as we delve into the annals of history, let us not forget the War of 1812. Let us remember the bravery of those who fought, the unity it inspired, the borders it defined, and the indigenous resistance it quelled. Well, it's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it? We've seen how the War of 1812 was sparked by maritime disputes and territorial ambitions, how the tide turned with key battles and strategic decisions, and how the war ended with the Treaty of Ghent. But remember, history is not just about dates and battles. It's about the people, the decisions they made, and the ripple effects of those decisions. So let's keep digging, keep questioning, and keep learning. Because every minute we spend understanding our past is a minute well spent. We hope you enjoyed this 10-minute timeline of the War of 1812. Please like, share and subscribe for more history in 10 minutes.